You've tuned into InvisiYouth Chat Sessions, a video podcast series. Our episode starts right now. Here's your host, Dominique Vale.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the InvisiYouth Chat Sessions, where you can check in for your dose of stigma-breaking, humor-filling, motivation-loving life hacks and motivational tips for all of the medically adultish people in your life. I'm Dominique Vale, founder of InvisiYouth and host of the InvisiYouth Chat Sessions, and today is Season 4, Episode 46, and we're going to treat it like a career day, guys, but trust me, it will not be those boring lectures you used to go to in high school and college. We're going to have fun today talking about work. We're going to get real on what it's like to not only work while you have a chronic illness or a disability, but also work in the chronic illness and disability space at the same time. So when you're a member of the community you actually work for, how do you really separate that personal and professional life and really are able to find that balance and find your purpose in your work that you do? So today's guest has actually been someone that InvisiYouth has had part of their virtual communities co-mingling for a few years now. So I'm thrilled to have her on the show. It's Dani Fusaro, which is better known as Days with Dani Nicole on Instagram. As a physical therapist and a doctor too, so I have to throw that one out there. Dani balances that work of also being a chronic illness mindset and lifestyle coach, a model, and content creator for her brand Days with Dani Nicole. She's all about empowering other people with chronic illnesses to find their fulfillment in life and really increasing that visibility for the disability population. So Dani really has a vibe for an aesthetic. So trust me, Instagram follow for sure with Dani's Instagram. It is, you'll know what I mean when you check it out. And on top of this, Dani also lives with complex chronic illnesses and is really open about the multifaceted way that she works while balancing her chronic illness and the different career lanes that she has. So it really is such a wonderful community that Dani has built around herself and her work, but really is fueled not only by her work that she does in these different spaces in the chronic illness space, but also her experience living with one. So plus Dani's also a fellow New Jerseyan. So, right on, you know, I'm going to have a good time when somebody's from my state. So Dani, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really excited to get to have you on the show and for us to get chatting about work. So we're going to jump right into Path to Power.
Path to Power.
Path to Power is one of those segments you all know and love. It's when we're going to talk about people picking hobbies and careers that have to do with the chronic illness and disability space, but also wanting to kind of find that way of empowering yourself in your own chronic illness journey. So we're going to be building your own path to power with Dani today. And like many people in the chronic illness space, I know it obviously from myself living with chronic illnesses, and I run a charity for young people with chronic illness. You can feel that your career and social platforms become really heavily involved in that space. So for you, what was your reasoning for wanting to have different careers that kind of all encompassed working in this community?
I mean, I think it's just because it's such a prevalent part of my life. I mean, in general, growing up, I always wanted to help people. I knew I wanted to be in the medical field when I was 8 or 9. I originally wanted to be a doctor, and then I had actually very similar to you, I had a soccer career-ending injury, and that's what made me want to get into physical therapy. And this was pre genetic diagnosis, all of that. I was never 100% healthy, but I wouldn't have considered myself chronically ill either by any means. And I was going into PT, and then I got really sick in PT school, and it really frustrated me as I was going through that one, signs had been missed for so many years. And then 2, I had to teach myself about my diagnosis so I could treat other people with it. I didn't learn about it in PT school. And I was just like, this is ridiculous. And I knew that as a physical therapist, I'd be able to figure out people who might have something else going on besides just a knee injury or whatever it was. So I thought that all of my work was going to be practicing in clinical PT, and the other stuff just kind of came later. The mindset coaching came just because I really transformed mine, of course, and I wanted to help others do that. But it was actually suggested to me by a couple of close people in my life. It wasn't something I sought out at first. And then the modeling and the photography / content creation, it's just something I ended up loving doing. I got back into photography after I got sick because I kind of stopped in high school because I had too much going on. And it started because I had this like chronic illness Instagram that was growing. And then I took it into creative photography. And then I was like, well, it's really good now. So can I make money doing this? And that's kind of how everything became interrelated.
And I love that. The big thing I'll always say to people is if you're interested in getting involved in, it doesn't even just have to be the chronic illness or disability space. If you're part of a community that's from the diversity space or more of a marginalized group, you can really figure out what you like to do anyway and see if you can morph that into something that would be part of the chronic illness activism or disability space or doing work of representation. So it was very similarly on your end of you wanting to do work in the medical field, and that slowly kept transitioning as your health, your injury and your health changed, which was similar to mine as well. I wanted to do work in philanthropy, but more traveling and working with the United Nations and refugees, and that as my health didn't permit, as my mom always said to me, I can't have you in a third world country where there's no hospital for 7 hours away. Like you don't have that health any longer. That is not a safe decision for you. Once I couldn't do that, it then morphed into, okay, well, then I can do nonprofit work. And then that morphed into, there wasn't a charity helping the non-medical aspect of living with chronic illness. It was always about wish granting or research. And I went, all right, I want to be able to live with my life while you're trying to find the cure. So where do I go from here? And then that's where this lane did. So it is very similar in that way that, like you said, you just kind of, it continues to snowball when you keep that curiosity open when it comes to work while managing your health at the same time.
Definitely.
And even going off of that too, are there ways that you kind of separate that mentality when you're focusing on your own health versus when you're putting content together or working with PT clients and you're talking about their health, and how do you kind of separate those two?
So it can be really tricky. What I do try really hard to do is make sure I'm not necessarily doing too much of each one, because I am a very empathetic person. So if I have too many coaching clients and too many PT clients, I just emotionally and cognitively like burn out, and then I'm not helpful to anyone. So what I try and do is a lot of the content creation that I do has nothing to do with chronic illness. It's just me showing up as a chronically ill person doing it. So I'm not like watering myself down or anything like that. Is that the term? I feel like I used it wrong.
I kind of liked when you said watering it down. I was like, diluting yourself, maybe? Well, it's the same thing.
But yeah,
there is a term.
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna move on. Anyway, I don't like try and hide it by any means, but that's talking about it isn't the purpose of the work. It's just the representation piece. So that is what can really help me, because it's like, okay, I am doing all of this chronic illness related work. Now I'm going to like go outside and shoot an outfit photo or like do this creative shoot or something like that. So that tends to really help me, but it does get really tricky because sometimes my content creation is chronic illness related, and sometimes I do have a lot of one thing or like two things that add together. But what I then do is I try and just what we're going to talk about a little later is like add in more balance and make sure I'm separating things in other ways so I don't feel like I'm living, breathing, and eating chronic illness.
Yeah, and I love how I really like that way of framing it too, because it really does allow you, like you said, to kind of keep the emotional boundary for yourself of where you're able to step in and like put the hard line down that you're willing and able to. Because I'm very type A as a person. Obviously, I run the charity, so
Yes.
my volunteers joke I pick the type of yellow that we use on every Instagram post, let alone anything else. So being able to set a boundary and go, okay, I'm feeling too much, or I'm feeling too overwhelmed, or when my health is going through something more unstable and I can't schedule with it, I have to schedule around it. That, okay, I need to kind of maneuver, ask for other people to get involved and help me complete things. So really, like you said, kind of putting in those points. And then something I'll always say is keep discovering the different hobbies or volunteering or activities that you like to do that are totally unrelated to your health. That if, especially on your end, pretty much every facet of what you do professionally is in the same lane as what you're dealing with day to day with your own health. So to then have hobbies on the outside, if you do photography that is creative, that doesn't have anything to do with your illness, so then that really does allow you to enjoy that hobby and not always have it dependent on, I'm only going to shoot content if it relates to health, or I'm only going to shoot content that doesn't. You kind of are adding different hobbies or activities to yourself that let you have something outside of it that you can always go to if you need that like full on break.
Exactly. I basically like mentally check out of like chronic illness mode when I go into that other stuff. And of course, like I'm still managing everything and I still have med alarms and I'm doing my treatments and whatnot, but it's almost like automatic at this point. So it's not something that like I'm consciously thinking about. It's like, oh, I have to take this pill, and then I go right back to what I'm doing. So I find that really helpful to think of it as kind of like checking out of it.
Yeah. Are there other things that you do that help when you're feeling that overwhelmed, or you're feeling like you feel like, I always will say, there's sometimes with the charity, if my health's not doing well and I'm focused on our resources we're making and I'm talking to volunteers about their health, I just feel like I'm on the hamster wheel and it's like every third word I'm hearing is illness. And I'm just like, it's too much. So for you, what are things that you do to kind of help yourself when you might feel that overwhelmed, kind of, it's only one topic I'm dealing with right now?
So the first thing I do is I put everything down and take a break from like all devices, including TV, because I just find they increase my anxiety. And there's actually a really good coffee shop downstairs, literally in my building. So I'll just like grab Cooper, my dog, and I'll get a coffee and I'll just like walk him around outside, like drinking my coffee, because then it forces me to kind of, I'm drinking something, I'm controlling my puppy who like can't walk the best on a leash yet. So it just makes me focus on that instead of other stuff. And then if I'm like not well enough to do that, then I might like FaceTime a healthy friend, or I'll take an Epsom salt bath. I love to read, so I might read something. I really like personal development books, but I've found that balancing it with like fantasy or fiction is even better, because sometimes like personal development books are incredible, but a lot of them make you think. And sometimes I need to just like not be thinking,
The brain needs to stop working.
Yeah. I needed to just like go into escape mode, not like, oh, this is a really healthy like mindset shift. Like it needs to just not be that. Or I'll like see if a friend of mine who has an abnormal like work schedule might be around. So those are kind of the types of things that I do when I feel overwhelmed, is like even if I have too much work and I'm overwhelmed by it, it sounds counterintuitive to put it down, but that's what I've found has been the most helpful.
Yeah. And I think that, like you said, it's when you're able to fully put your brain, not even just people will say turning off, they'll think, oh, I need to like meditate or do something else, where that's not, for a lot of people, that's not something they're capable of doing or would enjoy doing. But it's really like finding a way that your brain is shut off from what the focus has been and being able to deter it elsewhere. I'll always say that if I watch, I can speak Spanish, and then I'll also watch television in other languages with subtitles. So my brain is focused on reading and watching. And because I have to be hyper diligent to understand what's happening, then it slowly, after a 15-minute, 30-minute episode, I'm like, okay, I'm done. And that was, my brain kind of forgets the stressors. Right. But then also, if you're like in an office setting, I'll always say to people, if you're a teacher or you're working in an office or you have colleagues that you're around, or even if you're virtually working from home and you're having calls with your boss or clients on Zoom and you can't like tell them I need a break because you have to take the call, I'll always say, like, I say it's like taking kind of like the silent partner approach, where you're kind of reaching out, like you said, you might like message a friend that isn't at your job and be like, hey, can we chat later today? Or like, oh, I'm going to take a walk. Like you said, I'm going to take a walk with my dog later. Can I give you a call? And it's sort of that subconscious reminder that you are taking the step to do something for yourself when you have the time to do it that day, that at least gives you kind of like the eye on the prize at the end of the work day, when you don't have other people to worry about, that you're like, I have to get this done. I have this Zoom call to do, but I'm setting up something for me. I'm done dealing with this topic today. I'm going to go and do something else.
Right. And even something as simple as just like getting up and walking around your office for like 1 to 2 minutes can be really helpful too, because that is like a pacing tip that I always give people who work in like office settings or have to like study for really long periods for school, because it just kind of like gets your brain off the screen for a minute. And you don't necessarily think that it'll help that much, but it tends to help like more than you realize. So that's like a little tip that I always give too.
Yeah, I love that. Total random side note, I still do it at home when I work in my home office, is that I went in university, I would be in the library and I had like 7 different spots, whether it was different floors, different areas. And if I felt myself getting either too anxious or my health was acting up and I was having a flare up, I would pack everything and then go to another place.
That's like you said, it's like,
like, even though I knew I still had to do the same work I was doing, and I knew I wasn't going to feel better going up to the 3rd floor of a library versus being on the 1st floor, it was just like change of scenery. I'm taking the little break and I'm doing it. Even at home, if I'm stuck in my office and it's just like, I need a break, I'll pack up my stuff, go into my kitchen. I'll go in my living room. I'll go in my bedroom. And it just like gives you a change of scenery. It gives you the pause, like you said, and it lets you. And if while you're doing that, you're able to do some, for me, my muscles will lock because of my nerve damage. So I'll be able to do stretching while I'm setting things up, or I'm able to like grab KT tape, grab medication. So you kind of are like, all right, let me help myself a bit and give me a bit of a change of pace.
Definitely.
Yeah, I'm going to end on that note on this segment. And then before we go to our next one, but I love what you mentioned before. It ties into perfectly what I'm going to remind our listeners and viewers, that you mentioned you are a big book lover and you like fantasy as well, which
I do.
Well then, Dani, I have the perfect thing to tell you about. So as you guys have realized as well, we have a book giveaway fundraiser going on with our friends at Cork Books. The YA novel writer, Kristen O'Neill, who was on our podcast last month, she just debuted her first YA novel last year called Lycanthropy and Other Chronic Illnesses. It now came out in paperback this past month, which was super exciting. And it follows a story of friends that are on Discord in a chat room for a weekly support group with those who have chronic illness and disability. And the main character, Priya, realizes her friend in the group, Bridget, isn't really answering them, goes on a road trip to meet her friend in person for the first time, and may or may not find out that her friend does not have a chronic illness, but she's actually a werewolf. And how does that work out?
Okay.
So it's a very fun story. It's super impactful. Kristen also lives with 2 autoimmune disorders, so there's such good representation that the author also is chronically ill, and Quirk has graciously given us 3 signed copies of the new paperback edition for us to give away in the fundraiser. So we have, the book is up next to me while I'm chatting, so you can see what the cover looks like. And we have our fundraising link below in the description notes. So you can donate any amount you want, from $1 up to anything, and you get entered in to be one of our 3 winners of the signed copy of the book. If you donate more than $10, you get a double entry, so twice the amount to win. But we're doing this until June 30th. So please, if you are interested in getting a book or getting a signed copy of a book that you can then give to a friend or donate, that would be super helpful. So we have, like I said, the link in the description notes, and we would love your support and to get more people to read, more diverse authors that are part of this community as well. So that would be really fantastic.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. And one thing that I can imagine is going to be added into your daily life is a toolkit that would probably have some books in it. So we're going to go into our next segment. What's in your toolkit?
What's in your toolkit? What's in your toolkit?
We love a good tip sheet, guys. You know, we have digital resources that are essentially worksheets for you guys to look at every month now. So what better way for us to make life more adaptive and accessible and fun for you than us creating a worksheet and a toolkit for you to have for balancing work life, health life, and social life. So we're going to be picking Dani's brain and getting all of the tips and inner secrets about doing this. So for you, Dani, when you're organizing, because like I said, you have so many different types of work that you do. Mm-hmm. And for so many people with chronic illness, being self-employed and doing that is a viable option for them. So what have been things you do to help yourself stay organized medically and work and professionally? What are you kind of using to help with that?
So I utilize having different emails and then having a very organized Google Calendar the most, I would say. So my work email only has work stuff in it. And then my personal email is only personal stuff and medical stuff. So I make sure that like I don't put the wrong email for anything. So that way, if I'm like, okay, I'm done with work for the day, I can like turn off that email from my phone or something like that. Mm-hmm. And then that way it creates that like figurative separation for me. And then for my Google Calendar, I do have everything in one calendar because personally, I don't know how people look at multiple calendars and understand what their schedule is.
Oh my God, say that again, Dani. Yeah, God bless.
I don't it doesn't, how do you put them together? I just don't, I put them in one calendar. It keeps things simple. And I have color codes for everything. So everything that is like brand work related, so like coaching or social media or stuff like that, I actually put in my brand colors. I'm a super nerd, okay? I wanted to make it aesthetic, so I put in my brand colors for those. And then I made other things that are really important where I might have to like leave the house or something like that, bright colors, because I ended up organizing my schedule each day because otherwise I felt really like scattered. Mm-hmm. So I have like Pinterest for an hour and like create reels, shoot content, things like that. But those can all change because it's not a commitment. Mm-hmm. So then I have like meetings in bright yellow and like doctor's appointments in bright purple and friends in bright orange and things that really stick out. Mm-hmm. So I can see that and know that like, oh, that's something I can't like miss or move around. So that's really helpful. And then even on my computer, I use different windows. So I'll have like one window open for like work tabs and one window open for like shopping tabs or Pinterest tabs, like fun Pinterest inspiration tabs, not like Pinterest work tabs and things like that. So that helps with that a lot. And then something else I do is I literally like will schedule breaks into my calendar so that I don't forget to take them, because I tend to get like really zoned into certain things and I don't want to stop doing it because I'm in the zone. But then I'm like, I'll get up and be like, I did not move a muscle for 3 hours and everything hurts now. So I do that. And then just to make sure my medical stuff gets managed during days like that, if I have meds that are in the middle of the day at weird times, I just have alarms on my phone for those. And then for tasks, I tend to get like very, like I said, scattered and overwhelmed. So I have basically like a master list of everything that needs to get done for everything. And then that's on like a separate page in this notebook that I have just for things like this. And then each day I'll write out like 5 to 6 personal things and 5 to 6 work things. And I have to do those things before I can do anything else. So if I'm doing something that's not on the list, I'll be like, Dani, you need to do it on the list. Because that's what I would end up happening, is I would end up doing all these other things and not the thing that was like due tomorrow. So that is what I find helpful for that. Other thing for meds, which is like very basic, pill organizers are the best. You need them. If you don't use them, I wasn't as compliant with my meds when I didn't use them. So that's like an automatic, you must do this for me. Personally, I like the ones where you can pull out like a small one for each day and just carry it with you. And then for social stuff, I have kind of like a catch-all bag, carry-all bag, whatever term you want to use. It's like a small bag, so it's not too heavy. And in it, I always have anything that I might need when I'm out. So it has things like EpiPens, my inhaler, mints that really help my nausea, meds that I might only take as needed, topical CBD, alcohol swabs, hand sanitizer, like one extra of like my basic port supplies for my medical device, a packet of electrolytes, a small amount of cash, because you never know. Just like, and it used to always have a little snack in there when my blood sugar was a lot worse than it is now. And then anytime I use something in there, when I get home, I have to replace it. So that way, when I'm going to like leave the house for social stuff, I don't have to worry about anything. I just take my like little pill thing and I put it in that bag. And then I just put that bag into whatever bag that I'm bringing. And I know that I have everything. So it's not that I can leave like spontaneously per se, but it makes more spontaneous things happen. So that was like not the way I wanted to word that, but it got the meaning across.
Dani, you've like, I have like 5 different topics on this toolkit and you named like 4 of them. I was like, God damn, Dani's just checking all of these off as she's talking that I was going to bring up, which is so true. No, but I always say color coordinating is one of the things that people will be like, oh, Dominique, you color coordinate. Like, yes, I do. And once you do it, you'll never undo it.
That's what happened to me, because I was never that way in school. I would just be like, you're such a nerd, like joking, because obviously I wouldn't judge people, but I'd just be like, wow, that is effort I am just not willing to put in. And then when I got sick and my anxiety and like overwhelm and scatterbrainedness and brain fog got like a lot worse, I was just like, I need this. Like I can't, it's so much easier to function color coding things and like looking at things. And I use a visual, like printed big calendar too.
Me
So
too.
for some things, I won't write out every single thing on there, but I will do that because it just helps me. That way I have like my calendar on my phone when you're like in an doctor's office and have to make a follow-up appointment. And then I have something like I can put in front of me too.
Yeah, no, I like that because that even on when you is like super valuable because I have a separate calendar for all of our release dates. So all of our resources when they get released, all of our podcast episodes, and then when our social media. So that's like one separate printed calendar because my brain fogging does not permit me to like remind myself what's actually being released from my own nonprofit. I'm like, what's happening on a Thursday? But that's exactly as well as having them separated in that way that you can see one tangibly in front of you, but then have one you can interact with is great. And I liked on the social side of keeping yourself organized is a lot of people will say when you're chronically ill or disabled is like that spontaneity in your daily life if a friend calls, and that's like something you don't have that luxury. And it can feel kind of like you can feel a little bitter that you can't just like at the drop of a hat go and do things, not only just health permitting, but just because it takes you a bit to set up. So I love that you have that sort of, you're able to set something up that is sort of your like go-to bag that you'll put with your bag that's ready. So that's at least one thing out of your head of the checklist of things if you want to be a little bit spontaneous and do things. And that's really such a key point I'll always say to people is you have your little travel bag piece that you can put into whatever bag you want to take. Cause I'm like fashionably annoying that if it's not going to match my outfit, I'll be like taking all the stuff out and putting it into the new bag. And I'll always forget it'll always be the Tylenol I'll forget and be like, damn it, I need that today. It's always my little baby pill bottle that'll always go missing. But having something that you can just easily transfer that is the first thing you do when you walk in the door if you've used something is such a good routine to get yourself into that I think people will enjoy trying for themselves because then it helps even professionally too. My work bag is set up, it's separate when I go into New York City and everything's in there. And I actually have a little, you talk about being a little nerdy, I'll fully embrace that one. I have like a little Post-it that's like laminated that Dominique, did you put this in? Because it's stuff that I have not in my bag. It's like, did you bring your phone? Did you bring the phone charger? Did you bring your coffee? And it's just this little thing when I'm grabbing the bag that's clipped on the inside that I look and I'm like, oh, my phone is still in the house. And it's just like this reminder for me that every time I take that bag, it has that little reminder. Sure, I've had a couple of my friends or coworkers be like, what is this little checklist you have here? And I'm like, lucky for you, you don't have brain fog or memory loss, but I do. Right. And a few of my healthy friends have been like, I've actually put an alert checklist on my phone after seeing you do that. Cause I was like, I forget things all the time too. So it actually can work into your favor for sure.
Yeah.
For you, do you have anything, what are your like go-to YouTube channels or music or things that if you just want to unplug from your chronic illness work, or even if your health gets a bit overwhelming and you're like, I just need a decompressor, do you have sort of suggestions or random things that you'd be like, these are the different types of YouTube channels I go to or things that I do if I just need to like unwind and decompress?
Yeah, so I don't watch a ton of YouTube. I tend to like go down TikTok rabbit holes. And then kind of like my other social media, I have 2 TikTok accounts also. So my one account isn't really chronic illness at all. Like it's sprinkled in there, but like not really. So that is mostly a break from that type of stuff. And I really like Anna Sitar. She's like one of my favorites. I don't know. I'll watch like photography TikToks a lot. So I really like, her name's Marina Williams. There's Kylie Kadich. There's another guy named Michael Betzner. They're just like photography people mostly. But as far as like shows and stuff, I have like a bunch of comfort shows that I end up rewatching all the time.
That's such a wait, give me your what's the first one that pops into your head? Oh no.
Vampire Diaries.
Ah! Oh my God. The high school teenager in me is like internally fangirling. Oh, I love it.
I know. There's like that one. And then I'll watch like One Tree Hill or Gilmore Girls, or even just something like I'll watch the Harry Potter movies or something. I've watched those movies probably hundreds of times by now, but it's just my normal comfort thing. Like, oh, I love Harry Potter. Like, let me put this on. So those are kind of the ways that I take a break from like chronic illness social media.
Yeah, and I think it, like you said too, I don't have a TikTok because that was my volunteers tried and I went, guys, you're lucky I have 3 social medias for this charity. Don't give me a 4th. But YouTube, I'll go down the YouTube rabbit hole very easily. And for me, I'll always suggest to people, similarly to what you said, is whatever are your kind of like fantasy worlds or your hobbies. So whether that's you really enjoy sports, you enjoy animals, you enjoy the arts, you kind of find things that are in those lanes and you can just kind of subconsciously look at them or interact with them. So like I like comedy, but I do like watching sports commentating. So there was a show in the UK called The League of Their Own, which was like a comedian panel that would do sport commentating. It was James Corden was the host of it for like 16. Great. It was like 16 seasons. It's insane. Jack Whitehall is a British comedian. He was on the panel with 2 different athletes who were a cricket player and a footballer, European football, soccer, everybody who's American. Dani's like, we got you. So I would always just, that show would just naturally pop up onto my YouTube. And because my YouTube then would just, that algorithm knew what to do. And on Instagram, our charity volunteers will joke that there are way too many baby animal videos in our For You page. And they're like, Dominique, were you on the InvisiYouth Instagram? And I was like, how can you tell? They're like, there's 75 baby ducks and like baby like horses on here. So they're like, clearly Dominique was just like, I want something cute to look at while I'm posting this reel. Aww. And I just go and they're like, that's what's here right now. So like you said, having comfort and then also having things that you find fun are good kind of dual tones that you can sprinkle even into your work day to kind of give you a quick boost. And before we end this segment and we go into our story time segment, which is always everybody's favorite halfway point on the show, I like to thank everybody for being a part of the InvisiYouth Chat Sessions and for subscribing and watching or listening to our podcast. It is part of our virtual programming that we provide for free at InvisiYouth every month. So we always drop, you'll see it on the screen or it's in our description link below, our fundraising link, because everything we provide every month is for free, from our digital resources, our downloads, and our audio programming to help empower young people with chronic illness and disability to have the tools to thrive in the non-medical aspects of their daily life. So we always thank everyone for that support, and that quick subscribe click is always very much appreciated. So while we go to that transition and you hear this transitional music for So That One Time, make sure you click that subscribe button, everybody.
So that one time.
All right, Dani, I'm going to relax and let you tell all of our listeners a story for So That One Time.
Oh, no. So I thought about this because I didn't want to tell anything very depressing. So I figured I would just tell something that's very awkward, kind of funny, not super funny, but mostly I was like very, very awkward. So when I was in college before my health crashed, this was like the summer before freshman year of PT school. Well, not freshman year, but like first year, because I did like a combined program. So the first year was technically like my senior year of undergrad. And I was obsessed with sweet tea vodka and pink lemonade. Like that is what I brought everywhere. And I was super into being like an obnoxious hipster. So I literally would bring it in mason jars to like parties and stuff. Like I would bring my own mixed mason jar of sweet tea vodka and pink lemonade. And this one day I was like in my room and I was like, oh, this one, it was used, has been sitting here for too long. I really need to clean this. So I go to open it and I get this like extremely sharp pain in my wrist. And then my wrist was killing me. And I was like, I don't think that like it was, I almost started crying. It was so bad. I was like, I don't think that was good, but I'm going to assume this is going away. So we'll just, I was like, I had my friend open the jar, like all good, but still like, this is a mason jar. Like it was sticky, but like it's a jar.
And their wrist was fine when they went to open it.
It was totally fine when I went to open it. Yes, completely, mostly healthy wrist. So then turns out I tore like really important cartilage in my wrist and a tendon, and my wrist was like completely unstable. And I was supposed to have this like big surgery for it, but it's my dominant hand.
Oh no.
And obviously a PT is super hands-on, right? So my whole PT class ends up finding out about it. And because it's like I had to wear a brace, and then I was like modifying certain things we were doing in lab where we used our hands because certain things like hurt too bad for me to do them the right way.
Oh no.
So everyone kind of knew, except this was like early on in, it was, I think it was actually one of the first lectures that I had with this professor. And she is one of those, like, she didn't end up being intimidating by the end. She ended up being one of my favorites, but one of those like really intense, intimidating professors who just like pack in all the information and you're just like, oh my gosh, you're the smartest person I've like ever seen in my life. And I feel stupid next to you. She was one of those. So we're in this lecture of like 65 people and we get to the topic of the cartilage that I tore.
Oh, no.
And everyone starts laughing and looking at me. And the professor is just like, what is going on? Like, why are you laughing? Because it wasn't like everyone was like cracking up, but some people were, and pretty much everyone knew. So everyone was looking at everyone looking at me. And she was like, what is going on? And they were like, Dani, tell her the story.
No.
And I was just like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, I'm not going to tell this professor that I tore all this stuff in my wrist opening a mason jar of alcohol. So then she's like, Dani, what's the story? Like, what's going on? So I had to tell her the story. I was like, it's like I tore my TFCC, that's the name of the cartilage, opening a mason jar. And she just like stared at me and she was like, what? I was like, I tore my TFCC and this tendon and this ligament opening a mason jar. And she was just like, are you serious? I was like, and I'm just sitting here like mortified, because I also wasn't a super confident person or anything then. And I wasn't like a big person to participate in class. And now like 65 people are listening to me talk about how I tore my wrist opening a jar. And I was just like, this is the worst thing that has ever happened to me. Not really, but I was like, oh, like, why is everyone doing this to me right now? So we finished that class and I end up having to go see her a little bit after that because I had to talk to her about potentially having the surgery. I think about this moment all the time. And she looks at me like stone cold, not in a mean way, but just in a very matter-of-fact way. She goes, Dani, something is wrong with you and you need to figure out what it is before you have this surgery. And I was so taken aback. I was just like, what? She was like, something is wrong with you and you need to figure it out, because I don't think the surgery will go well, considering like what happened to you and the other things you told me about other injuries you've had. I was just like, oh, okay. Like, how? I was like, how do I do that? I was like, what? And then not 6 months later is when my health crashed.
Oh my
And
God.
I was just like, oh my gosh. But yeah, it's just
Premonition.
like a funny story that just lives on, because now, like, anytime I go to grab a mason jar with my friends or something, they'll be like, oh, do you want me to grab that? I'm like, guys, I'm fine.
I know what's wrong with me now.
Well, it's just like, it was sticky lemonade and vodka, which gets sticky, you know? So it was very sticky, but still, like,
I love it.
yeah.
Oh my God. I have a great transition to our next segment after that now. So in an ideal world, Dani wouldn't have opened that mason jar, but she did. So we're going to go into our next segment of In an Ideal World. In an ideal world, we like to break those barriers and stigmas. And, rolling the boulder up the hill of breaking misconceptions is hard. So in an ideal world, we like to help create those and how we're able to break those barriers to create an ideal world for you. So obviously talking about balancing living with chronic illness and working in chronic illness space, or disability in the disability space, Dani and I are going to chat about how we are able to really provide that balance for ourselves. So for you, Dani, are there things that when you're in the chronic illness space socially or personally, just with yourself, and you're dealing a lot with your health, sometimes you can feel that when you're doing it professionally, then too, that you're trying to empower others or give them advice, that kind of imposter syndrome or guilt can kind of pop up often because you're not in the actual space to be physically providing that kind of support. So for you, how do you tackle those moments when personally your health is not great, but you have to be able to project support for yourself professionally in the same space?
So it's still a really hard thing for me to kind of figure out where that line is, because I have to share a certain amount of what I'm going through so that I seem relatable to people who are going through more than I might be going through right now. Because it's like when you're super, super, super sick and you see someone creating all this fun, creative content, you're like, oh, that person doesn't understand me at all. They have no idea what it's like to be like this. And I was like that, and I'm really grateful I'm not anymore, but it's like, well, I actually do. So I have to kind of put some of those things in there. But like you said, I have to kind of also make it seem like things are still together. So what I found kind of works for me is that I still share a little bit of everything, but I don't force myself to be inspirational when I don't feel like I want to be. So I won't make it doom and gloom either. So that's how I kind of maintain that professionalism, but I'm not afraid to just like say a little bit of what's going on, because I don't want to seem like I'm like together all the time. I don't want to be perfect. I'm not perfect. So I don't want others to put a lot of pressure on themselves to get to this place that they think that I'm in. So that's how I kind of do it. And another thing is that I used to feel like I quote unquote owed the community all of the details. Like I had to share every single thing. And after a while, that got really overwhelming, because then I was getting a ton of questions. And this was before I worked in the space, but it was like so many questions, so much unsolicited advice, some judgments too about my decisions or this and that. Like you get so much. And it was this like happy space became so overwhelming. And I felt like I was obligated to keep showing up in that way. And I realized that I don't actually owe anyone anything, and I can choose to share what I'm comfortable sharing. And that's something I like to always highlight, because a lot of people feel that way when they're starting to grow in the community. So I always like to remind people, like, you don't owe anyone anything, and you can just share like what you think is helpful.
Yeah. And I love that you said that it's beyond like setting up a boundary. It's knowing where like your sharing your personals is up to you and what makes you feel fulfilled. And that's such a big tip for people that are that are dealing with chronic illness and are maybe adding it in the social element, that they'll have a TikTok or Instagram, or they're joining a virtual Facebook group with it, or even like on InvisiYouth, they're joining our volunteer program. So now they're interacting with more people with different chronic illnesses or disability, and you feel the need to always be on the best version of your health. And when you're having bad days, you're comparing your bad days to somebody else's bad days. And I'm always telling everyone chronic illness is unique for that reason, which I think is a beautiful thing, that I can have the same set of diagnoses as somebody else, but my symptoms will mimic someone who has a totally other chronic illness versus one of our volunteers or one of my friends who have the same exact ones as me. So it's hard to then, you're always comparing your good and your bad with others, which is natural for young people outside of chronic illness. It's especially with social media, you're constantly, and if even in professional settings, you're going, even on your end, you can see other people who, who are other physical therapists, and you're seeing what they're doing, be like, well, should I be doing things that way or not? And you're just constantly like wondering how you can always evolve and get better. So really, like you said, kind of knowing where you want to draw the line of what you want to share and what's comfortable for you. We'll always say that 24-hour period. If your instinct is, I'm not sure if I want to answer this question, or I'm not sure if I want to share this, or I'm not sure if I feel at my best to share it, then that's a good point of when you feel that instinct voice in your head, wait 24 hours before you would hit that send button or say it to somebody. Because 9 times out of 10, you'll make the correct decision if you had time to simmer on it and then think about it. So that's really, it allows you to kind of savor your wins without somebody else's perspectives, or it allows you to just wallow in a crap flare-up day without somebody else saying, well, my flare-up day was worse, or somebody else saying, giving you so much empathy that you're like, God, I want to get better now because I have 45 people in the comments hoping I get better, and I'm not getting better that fast. So like you said, finding that kind of barriers, really, it's dependent, because your interest in illness work is dependent on you having one. So you want to be able to enjoy working for that community if you didn't have one. So that's what I'll always say to people. If you're volunteering for a chronic illness disability charity, if you're working for this space, or you're doing stuff in the medical field, enjoy it as if you were quote unquote healthy and non-disabled. Don't make what your health situation is dependent on whether or not you feel like you're fulfilling other people or empowering other people. Because then you can sometimes feel resentment, good or bad, when it comes to your health, good days or bad days. Because if you're having so many good days, you're like, am I able to give advice now to bad days? Because I've been doing pretty well for a month or two. So really being able to be like, I would be saying these things if I had no personal connection is like a super good boundary point.
I was going to say that's a big change that I made, is where like I very rarely talk about my own personal health anymore.
Same. Yep.
I just talk about chronic illness in general. And a lot of that doesn't necessarily have to do with the community. It's just a mindset shift that has helped me personally, but it also helps with those boundaries and not burning myself out like in my DMs every day.
Yeah. And if you want, and I'll always, that is the same, my first year of running InvisiYouth, my board was like, share everything. You're the spokesperson, you're the face of the charity. And then after a year, it will be 7 years this month of running the charity. After that year, I'm exceptionally private. So my friends were finding out that I was chronically ill for 8 years by noticing the charity on social media, because they never knew anything from me. And it was just this barrier of personal that I felt I'm able to have us provide better resources when it's not dependent on the fact that I've had multifaceted chronic illness experience. Like, that's not the point of this. So like you said, that's a really good point for people to know, is like keeping that kind of detachment. And if you want personalized advice, I do the professional personal DM slide, everyone. It's always do that. And so many people will either, if you don't get answered, okay, that's fantastic. And if you do, you're getting the advice that you could have gotten publicly commenting to somebody. So if you want that solicited advice, solicit it from somebody. Don't worry about, that's really a good point. And even the last question that I wanted to ask for you is, it's always about, we'll always say, especially that you like personal growth work, finding a purpose, finding your lane is super important. And when you have chronic illness or disability, you're kind of tailoring yourself to what your body is capable of, or your mental health is capable of. So for you, do you have like, what are starting points that young people can do to kind of find their lane when it comes to their work life with chronic illness?
So we talked about this a little bit already, but it's start with what you're interested in. Like, I didn't get into photography to make money from content creation. I got into it because it felt empowering to me to be able to curate an image in the way I wanted it, how I wanted it, irrelevant to like what was going on in my life. So you want to start like really small and just start doing things that you feel called to do just because you want to. And don't try and like make money or monetize every single thing right away. Like, just slowly learn about things and enjoy the process, especially if you have the privilege to like live at home and not have to work to like pay your rent. Take your time, and if you want to do photography, do that. If you want to learn social media marketing, there's 1,000 influencer courses to like teach you about that, because you want to try and figure out who you authentically are now, instead of trying to like be the person you were before you got sick. And then another thing is like, when you're feeling called to do these things, don't be afraid to contact other people in the community who are doing something that you're interested in. So like, I've had 2 interns help me with social media work. And because what I want to do as hopefully my business grows is the only people I want to hire are chronically ill individuals that are having trouble like finding work, because as you know, it's so hard.
Yeah.
So I taught, one was a high schooler and one was like 20 years old. And I taught both of them like the social media platform algorithms and like how to do all this stuff. So they did helpful work for me, but I also like taught them all of those things. And that is something that I'm always willing to try and do to the extent that I can. And, I have a friend who's in law school, so she's can't really answer that much during the school year, but like, especially during the summer, if you're interested in law school, ask her in a couple of weeks, like, different things like that. So people are around to help if you have the interest. Like you said, solicit that advice and just see what happens.
Yeah. And even the big thing I got is the one word you said, which is start, which is always for us is begin. It's people get stuck in the worrying of you're capable of adapting, because then they worry if you physically aren't capable, that it's a letdown. And it is a little bit. There are things that I physically have tried, even with InvisiYouth, that we've launched a couple things in our first 3 or 4 years that I wasn't physically capable of maintaining. So I had to go to our board and say, we can't keep this program because I can't sustain it. And if you want me involved in all program development and you want to make sure that 100% of our donations are going to these resources and helping these people, so we're not paying for somebody to work with me and do different things and use that money elsewhere, I'm like, I need the help, because we thought this was a good idea. I'm not interested in it anymore, and I'm not capable of doing it. And it's a bit of a letdown, but you're able to then open up other avenues. Like what we did is I like obviously chatting. And so us having audio resources was good because it's something I'm very quickly capable of doing. It's something our demographic of young adults really enjoys, is that audio programming, that quick savable content that they can utilize later. So for us, it was able to kind of find the two. But like you said, just begin something and not be afraid of your health dictating if it's capable or not to be adapted for you. That's a really great point to kind of end that segment on. Is just begin. And we're going to begin our last segment, guys, because now that Dani's given us so much advice, we're going to get to know the woman behind the brand of Days with Dani Nicole and do rapid fire roundup.
Rapid fire round.
Guys, rapid fire roundup. I'm going to be throwing out topics to Dani and we are going to get to know her. So Dani, are you ready?
No, but go ahead.
In full disclosure, I love it. All right. If you had a song to get up to dance to at a wedding, what song comes into your mind?
That Chumbawamba song, the one where it's like, if you get knocked down, if I get knocked down, I get up again.
Oh my God. Yep.
That one, because it's just so goofy and my whole family like loves it. So I feel like it would be that one.
That would be that one. I love that. How do you take your tea or coffee in the morning?
I put a little bit of maple sugar into my coffee.
Mm-hmm. God, now I want to try that. Jeez.
It's very good.
What are 2 words that you would say describe you as a physical therapist?
Creative and compassionate.
I was thinking compassionate right when you said it. I was like, oh, Dani would be compassionate. What is your favorite TikTok trend that you've tried?
I was thinking about that. I don't know. I feel like so many are fun. I guess the one that I would say was really fun is this really stupid one in like early 2020 where people would show like their significant other and they would be like, the toilet is smoking. And you would appreciate this. My dad is very old school Italian.
Great.
And you would put like an empty toilet paper roll in between like the seat and the lid of the toilet. And then you would put 2 toilet paper rolls as like eyes on top of it. And I was like, Dad, the toilet is smoking. And he was like, what? I was like, Dad, the toilet is smoking. And he didn't realize I was videoing him the whole time. So then he sees the toilet and he just turns and it's just like,
annoyed Italian father.
yeah. That just like look that they get. And then he started laughing. But it took him he's like, that's really funny. That's really funny. And then starts laughing as he's walking away. I was like, okay, Dad.
The delay. If you were having a family game night, what would be like the go-to board game or the go-to game that
Dominoes.
Dani's like, don't even need that. I feel even more Italian now. What's your favorite season during the year?
Fall.
Good photos during the fall. What is, if you were able to eat one thing for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Sweet potato.
Ooh. Ooh. I love that. What is your favorite age during your years growing up?
I feel like when I was like 10.
Oh, good age.
Because I was like old enough to be able to like do things according to my interests and pick out my own outfits and stuff.
That's always a key.
I wasn't old enough to like start being insecure. It was like just prior to being really insecure and having body image issues and all of that. So I feel like I was just very secure in who I was and had a lot of fun. But also college was really fun. Like I would say the last 2 years of college were really
There we go. I like that. And then to end it, what would be your best piece of advice for others who have chronic illness or disability that want to work in the chronic illness disability space?
I mean, I think it's what we said is to 1, just start. And then 2, we talked about imposter syndrome a little bit, but not a ton. And before I started coaching others, I had a coach myself. She doesn't have a chronic illness, But what I found very helpful, and I think about all the time, is she said, no one that's judging you is doing more than you. Because when you think about it, like people who are doing quote unquote, like bigger things, they don't care what you're doing. They're not judging you. So
Very
anyone
true.
that's judging you is either where you are or like behind you.
Mhm.
So it would just help like quiet that noise sometimes.
I like that.
So I would kind of combine that with like feel the fear and do it anyway, to being like, okay, this is really, really scary, but I'm going to just start and we're going to see what happens. And I still feel all of this doubt, but we're just going to do it anyway. And as I kept doing that, it got easier.
I like that. That's really good advice. Dani, I had so much fun with you today. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
And I want everyone to be able to find you and your work on social media. So where can our listeners find you?
I'm on Instagram, TikTok, and Pinterest. Instagram is Dani_Fusaro. And then so is TikTok, but I have another TikTok account. That's Days with Dani Nicole. And then Pinterest, I think, is Dani_Fusaro, I believe.
And we'll have all of those links in the description as well. And even if you look up Days with Dani Nicole, you'll find all of those on her website as well.
Yes.
So all of those links will be in the description notes. So you guys can check out Dani. And like I said in the beginning, get into that Instagram aesthetic, which is top notch.
Thank you.
So, and everybody, as usual, you can find InvisiYouth on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at InvisiYouth. And you can find the InvisiYouth Chat Sessions, our podcasts that come out twice a month on YouTube and on our all audio podcast platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And so thank you again, Dani, for being on the show. And thank you everybody for listening and watching. And I will see you all soon. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much. Bye.